So, we all in Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3. What must I do? Let's just say part 1. I don't know if we're going to get through everything, but if we don't, that's not a bad thing anyway. Let's try and juice out as much as we can. So Genesis chapter 3. Now I'm going to ask questions as we go along, as I do, and I'm reading from the authorized version, following any version that you have. Sometimes, as you know, I read from the NLT as well. Sometimes it can be a little bit clearer. So in Genesis chapter 3, let's set the scene. God has created the world. He's created man. Hey Claire, welcome. Good to have you. God has created man. He's created this world. He's created the Garden of Eden. And then, he's planted a garden. He planted the Garden of Eden. And then he put Adam and Eve in the garden to look after it and what have you. All right. And in Genesis 3, we come to this scene. And it starts with the serpent approaching the woman by the tree. And that's where we're going to start the account from. All right. It says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. Now, if you've got any questions on anything on this, don't hesitate to ask, because there's lots of questions that can come up. And then it says, and he said unto the woman, now notice very carefully the question of the serpent. He said unto the woman, yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Pause there. Let's just pause right there. There's something wrong with that question. Most of us who are familiar with this account don't pick up on what's wrong with that question. I've done this many a times, and I've yet to find somebody who saw exactly what was wrong with the question. We make an assumption that, yeah, but there's nothing wrong with the question. The question was fine. It was legit. Now, what is wrong with the question? Yes. Did God say you shouldn't eat of every tree of the garden? What is wrong with the question?
Sounds like a leading question.
Okay, a leading question. Good. Let me give you a clue. What did God actually say about the tree that they could not eat and the tree they could eat? What did he actually say in the literal sense? Let's go to verse 16 and 17 and let's analyze it. Verse 16 and 17 of chapter 2, chapter 2, verse 16 and 17. Notice what it says. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of how many trees? Every tree of the garden. Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day thou eatest thereof, ye shall surely die. So, notice what he says. The first thing he says to Adam and Eve is, you can eat of every tree of the garden, except this one. Are we clear on that one? All right. Now, there's another interesting fact I want to bring out as well. In verse 9, look where the trees were. The trees in question that we're talking about. Verse 9. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So there seems to be some indication that they were both in maybe some close proximity to each other. They're both in the middle of the garden. Right? That's what it seems to be saying to me. Now, verse 16, he says, you can eat of all the trees of the garden, except this one. That's what the command was. The command wasn't, Adam and Eve, hey, I've got something to tell you. Oh, what's that? Don't eat of that tree. Full stop. There is a subtle difference, a nuance here that's very, very key. Because look at the serpent's question. Did God say you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Yea, hath God said you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Do you notice? Are you seeing what's wrong here? There's a subtlety in his question that's very, very cunning. God's command is in the positive. You can eat of every tree of the garden. His question is focusing on what? The prohibition. Did God say you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? So it solicited a response, and Eve says this, and the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. Let me put it this way. Your parent says to you, you say to your parents, sorry, Mum, I'm going to get married. Mum and Dad, I'm getting married. Like, oh, great. And then they say to you, okay, considering the circumstances, wait. Wait for 6 months. You go and tell your friends what happened, and one of your friends say, why did they say you couldn't get married?
Yeah.
Now, there's a technicality there. Yes, but the way they've asked the question, folks, it makes it seem like your parents are trying to take away what you actually want. You're going to get married. They didn't say you can't get married. They just said, wait for a period of time. And your friend listening goes, but why did they say you can't get married? And you're like, oh, and then you not realizing the implications of that question, you go, oh, I don't know, they said this. And then your friend's going to go, yeah, but why did they say that? Because this. And you're like, yeah, it's true, blah, blah, blah. And then you go back to your parents all disgruntled and vexed. I want to get married in 3 months. Why can't I get married in 3 months? But we've already discussed it. We said 6 months because da. Now, it's not that you're wrong or they're right and you're wrong. It's the mindset now is focused on the prohibition. Why can't I do it now? In the 3 months when I wanted to do it. So, the serpent's question, did God say you should not eat of every tree of the garden? Is that what God said?
No, he said you can eat of every tree in the garden.
And eat of every tree of the garden, but except this one.
Yeah.
So the fact that the question is, did God say you should not eat of every tree of the garden?
The answer should have just been no.
Well, this is it. She did say no though, Lyndon. Look, she says, verse 2, we may eat, and the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the trees of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest ye die. What's interesting, God didn't say not to touch it. She put it in there, right? And the serpent said unto the woman, you shall not surely die. So straight away, so what's wrong with his question? And what's wrong with it?
It's all inclusive, and it's ignoring the freedom.
Right. Because they had, remember the command was, ye shall eat, you can eat of every tree of the garden. That command included which tree? The most important
tree of life.
The tree of life.
I never thought about that before, until you said it just a couple of minutes ago. I was like, right, there's 2 trees in the midst of the garden. There was the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life, and there's only one tree that God told them not to eat in it.
Right.
So they could have eaten of the tree of life. But imagine the tree of the knowledge of good and evil seemed more tempting to eat than the tree of life.
That's what the serpent is doing. Did God say you should not eat of every tree of the garden? You should not eat. The command was, God, imagine the first thing they're hearing from God in terms of command, law, obedience, whatever, is this. This is what you can do. Do you see? The first thing, the command, and God commanded the man saying, this is what you can do. You can do this. You can access all the theme parks in England except for Chessington. But you want to go to Chessington.
Mhm.
What?
Mm.
You can access all the same rights in Chessington on all the other are in Chessington. The same rights.
Mm.
Because look at verse 9. Verse 9. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is what? Pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So none of them lacked. So the tree of knowledge of good and evil wasn't more attractive than the others.
Yeah.
So it was like, ooh, like glowing, ooh, come and look at me. No, it looked exactly the same in terms of quality. It might have looked, you know what? It might have looked like exactly, because no, she just said the tree in the midst of the garden. She said the tree in the middle of the garden.
Yeah. It's interesting that obviously before the serpent rocked up, there was no desire. So it's almost like, because before that point, they had never, and this isn't a wiring problem in terms of the way mankind is wired. It's a gratitude thing that they never questioned why they weren't to touch it until someone questioned it for them, or put the questioning in their head in it.
Right. So let's go to the what's wrong. Well, let me give you the what is a fancy way of analyzing his question. It's called a covert negative. We know what the word covert means, like covert operations. It's not blatant, it's not obvious. It's a covert negative. The question is a negative question, but it's subtly negative. It's not really perceived what that question is going to do if I even answer, if I entertain it. She shouldn't have even entertained the question, but this is not the sin yet, right? This is not, but we're looking at the development of how Satan got her to desire to do something which was forbidden. Okay, now, number one, the reason why I love this account, because it's so simple but so deep, because we miss the psychology that's going on. We miss the subtlety of the devil. This is the devil at his best, remember, because everything hinges. He's coming to these two, right? And here's another thought. That means the fall must have happened already.
Yeah, before he.
Because they're there. Think about it. Yeah, they're there. Adam and Eve are there. And the serpents come to Adam and Eve, tempting Eve to disobey God. The serpents coming to Eve to disobey God. Yeah. So my question is, but God, then at some point, you made this world, put Adam and Eve in it, knowing you've got this rebellious son gone wild, gone rogue. Mm-hmm. He's gone rogue. And he's like, anyone on God's side? He's gone rogue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? He's gone AWOL, as they say. He's gone AWOL, absent without leave. And he's like, anyone on God's side? And he sees Adam and he goes, oh. And he's gone down to them. Mm. Here's another idea. Here's a question. Why on earth would God make Adam and Eve in that context? The rebellion has taken place already, and then he makes Adam and Eve. For then Satan to come to them. Because you got a tree, but then you got Satan at the tree. You already had a tree already. Does that make sense? The tree wasn't made for Satan. I don't believe the tree was made for Satan, for him to, because he didn't need a tree in heaven to tempt the angels. Does that make sense? So the tree wasn't made for Satan to tempt Adam and Eve. The tree was already going to be a test for Adam and Eve. But he's come to try and speed things up. That's how I see it. Because there was no tree in heaven. God didn't give the angels a tree. Hey, decide. Let me see what your loyalty is. In fact, let me ask that question first. Why the tree? Let me not make assumptions. What's your thought? Why on earth would you make a tree of knowledge of good and evil and a tree of life? Why would you even do that? What do you think?
Mike,
thoughts? Yes, Liz.
It's to give people choice.
Oh, Vincent, sorry.
Just Vince. To give people choice. give Adam and Eve the choice. You choose to follow God.
Okay, I'm gonna
Because
ask. Sorry.
I was just going to say, in regards of if someone makes a decision, it's a lot stronger than just being sort of directed that way.
Okay, I like that. Good.
Intrinsic. The choice is intrinsic.
Right, okay. Good. I like that. Let me ask this question though, Vince, and this is everybody else as well. Yeah, but why do you want them to make a choice? There's something else as well, another step deeper we can go into, but why is that choice then the implication is then that choice is so important to God for Adam and Eve to make. Why? What is it? What else is there why he wants you to make a choice, Adam and Eve to make a choice, not just to be directed or coerced or built, wired so they have no other choice. They're just a robot. They're just automatons.
Because of what happened with the fall, in regards of they was wired that way, but it still went wrong.
Okay. So you're saying that the angels had no choice?
Where else were they to go at that time?
Right, but when you say where else were to go, do you mean like as in their decisions to go, or like physically there was nowhere they could actually leave and go? Is that what you mean?
Well, the for me the angels were made and they're devoted to God already.
Right.
That's how they were wired, but something went wrong with Satan.
Right.
And God decided to create man, Adam and Eve, but also give them the choice in regards of tree of life. But it was even though he said they will surely die, it was the tree of knowledge. It didn't say the tree of death. He said the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Right.
So in regards of there was that giving them that choice of more knowledge. They weren't wired that way in regards of to be inquisitive. Well, Eve was inquisitive because she did eat of the tree, but it kind of putting myself in circles. But
it's all right. It's all right. That's why I said at the beginning there's going to be good questions. There's going to be loads of questions when we really look at this with fresh eyes. Yes, Chantal.
Oh, I was just thinking, so you have Satan in heaven, and then you had the mystery of iniquity where he felt in his heart like he needed to be above God and he needed to be like God. And then they had the whole battle, and then he took a third of the angels. But it wasn't until, like, even if we look at Job, right? He was still going to heaven, as far as I can tell, because he was meeting the sons of God in Job 1 and 2, I think it is. Okay. So I don't know if God specifically placed Satan in the garden or if he chose to be there. And then God was like, okay, you're allowed to be on earth, but you can only stay within this area by this tree. You can't just roam around everywhere, which is why God said you can eat of every tree except for this one. So it's kind of like he restricted Satan in the same way that when you had Job being attacked by Satan again, Satan went to God and he was like, Job only worships you because he only honors you and loves you because you protect him and you give him all the good things. So then God was like, okay, you can touch certain things, but don't touch him. So then Satan had access to his wealth and his family and different things like that. So I think it's kind of similar in the Garden of Eden in that God may have said, okay, you can be here, but nowhere else. That's just an idea.
I'm thinking about that as well. I'm thinking, I'm playing devil's advocate and thinking if I was the enemy, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else, especially knowing that there is no difference between that tree in terms of physical appearance. Yeah, it's not more, doesn't, like Michael was saying, doesn't look more magnificent than the others. So it would make sense that he just stays there and waits till human inquisition kind of, moves until they're around that area. Do you know what I'm saying? But I was thinking about something else, Mike, that you said that this is what I was going to say originally. You remember when your Uncle Sam came to Game Changers?
Yep.
And it was at this point, it's never left me. I remember when he said it. It's like the whole reason why that whole thing was orchestrated is because of an enemy.
Right.
And it kind of persuaded me that it's like the analogy of stranger danger.
Right.
Right. You will never need to tell your children, beware of, don't go into people's vans when they offer you sweets. If there weren't, pedophiles out there wanting to touch up kids, you get me?
Right.
The only reason why you tell them that earlier than maybe necessary, because of the necessity. So it is necessary.
Right.
That's as young as 4 or 5 years old.
Right.
So the whole reason why you tell them that is because there's why is that such a tongue twister? There's people out there touching little kids, man. So that's why you tell them. So it's like I'm of the persuasion that the command not to touch the tree, not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, was put in place because of the enemy.
Okay.
But also hearing what you were saying, Mike, about God may have done that anyway, is because there needs to be a cognitive difference there needs to be a reason why we choose good. But if good is all you know, then there is no comparison. Or rather, if you've never had no one to say to you, don't do this, of course you're going to follow everything, because everything there's nothing that's off limits. You see what I'm saying? So how do you test obedience? How do you test faith? How do you test these things? Well, there has to be a situation where that needs to be tried, is the word I'm looking for. And I believe that the simple commandment, don't touch this, could have been anything, or don't eat of this, is an ideal way to try that, to see what they were made of, because it is about choice at the end of the day. So if it's about choice, then as Chantal was saying, you've got a Job situation where the devil's coming to him saying, well, of course he's going to worship you. You've given him everything. Take that stuff away and see if he worships you for you rather than because of the stuff you give him. So not that was a accusation that was going on in God's mind anyway, but it's an ideal way to try what their actual faith is made up of.
Right. Right. All right. So, okay. Some good points. Good, interesting points. Let me try and deal with. Let's go, because 3 different points have been made. Right. Vince touched on the angels, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vince. The angels not really having a choice, a real choice, really, because they were kind of made to obey. Is that what you were saying? I don't want to misquote you. That's what I got from what you were saying.
For me, it's a grey area in regards of.
All right.
Well,
no, that's all right. I understand why you say it's grey, as in, because like scripturally, it might, it's where do we find the idea that they would have had choice, like blatantly in that sense. So, is that why you say it's a grey area? Because I can understand if you're saying it from that perspective.
Yes, that's the perspective I'm saying it from.
Right. I appreciate it. I get you. Definitely. It's a bit harder to prove that, like, concretely, they must have had. There are, and then Chantel made the point that I want to pick up on, which was interesting, was saying restricted just to the garden. Similarly, he was restricted to only allowed to do certain things, only allowed to tempt Job in certain ways. Like, he was allowed to take away his family's lives, his livestock, but he wasn't allowed to touch him in his person. And in chapter 2, he was allowed to actually give him boils from the head from his head all the way down to his scalp. And so God was checking his power, which would then make sense. Then, well, did he check he could check his power in the beginning. And in Lyndon's point, they would have been warned by God because they would have been warned by God because there was a tempter, because this fall has taken place. So the tree has been put there to test their loyalty, because disloyalty is now being sin is now actually been it's now out it's in the atmosphere now. This thing called sin has now been birthed, right, in that sense. So I'm starting to question my first point, that whether God would have put a tree there anyway. I don't know. It's a bit of a speculative point. I was kind of convinced that he would have put a tree there anyway to test choice. But now, when Lyndon, you made your point about, well, the fact that this has happened, it's now going to prove, God wanted to prove, no, there are people who want to follow me, they can choose and just follow me based upon who I am. Watch, I'm going to try the experiment, right? And it doesn't mean the experiment failed, because we're sitting here today talking about Jesus and God in the Bible, right? So,
Amen.
It's not like it failed kind of thing, right? Jesus came and died. But without that perspective, it's like, it failed, man. Look at them. They failed miserably, right? But there was a failure. We have to admit there was a failure, because hence there'll be no need for forgiveness. So there was a mistake made and a failure in that sense. But the plan hasn't failed in what's the point, proving the point. What's the point God is trying to make? So some interesting ideas. So let me tackle verse 1. Let me tackle point 1. Angels not having choice. And again, I'm admitting with Vince, for me, I'm not going to be dogmatic, say here's the verse, but here are some verses to give my reasoning as to why I say they would have been given choice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So let's go to 1 John 4 verse 8. 1 John 4 verse 8. The reason why I think that's important, because the angels, I don't see any difference than Adam and Eve. So if the angels maybe didn't have choice, then it could be extrapolated. And well, how do we know Adam and Eve had choice? They could be, So this is why I don't think it's a non-important point to kind of be like, well, we can leave it 50-50 and then move to the next point. Because there's some points like that we think it doesn't matter if you say believe that. It doesn't really change the whole narrative anyway. All right. 1 John 4 verse 8. The last line I want to focus on, it says, he that loveth not knoweth not God. The last 4 words, for God is love. For God is love. So God is love. He's always been love. And from what we from what we understand love to be, and what we know love is, if love itself doesn't force and cannot force itself on the people it wants to give its love, then neither is it going to want that in return. Does that make sense? It wants love has to be given freely and received freely, right? And so if God is love, then he's created even the angels from that, that source, that resource. You've got this pool called love, this clay, and when love creates, then it creates beings with free choice. It creates beings with freedom of choice, because the expression of true love can only be done freely and willingly and intelligently. If it's not done from that, like if you look at love having ingredients, right? We say love, but I look at love as like a box, and you open it and it's got certain key ingredients. If you take one of the ingredients out, it ceases to be love. And one of the key most important ingredients is freedom of choice. Once freedom of choice is taken out, the box itself, if you can imagine, if you believe in fantasy and sci-fi, just imagine it just corroding away and just becoming this dark, ugly, nasty little box, and vines and thorns all over it. Just change it. That's not what the thing you created. As soon as you put choice back in, it becomes this nice, beautiful, green, golden, nice box. You take choice out, ugly. Things don't want it no more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
So it's just from that one, take that principle, I'd say, well, the angels would have had to be given given choice. Next thing, if they weren't given choice, then God cannot then say to, there can be no what's the word I'm looking for? Infractions. There can be no transgression. Because if there is no, if I make, I've got some Bluetooth headphones and I've made it and it goes under rigorous testing for it to do what I want it to do. During the tests, when the tests fail, whose fault is it? It's not the Bluetooth speaker's fault, it's my fault. I go back and see what's wrong and I tweak it because I'm the creator, and I tweak until it's doing, after rigorous tests, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 tests, it's doing what we want it to do. We think it's gonna be able to last how many years without, you know, those other faults that we saw. So if they were created without choice, then Lucifer being, let's go to the text, sorry, Ezekiel, Isaiah 14, verse 12, Isaiah 14 verse 12, then this wouldn't make any sense. Then there would have to be blame against God. But let's just look at the verse, Isaiah 14 verse 12. In fact, I'm loving this study because there's new questions I've personally never really thought about. And this is I like these kind of studies. We're going a little bit more depth, getting a bit more ideas, because this will help us communicate the account to other people, because when they come up with similar questions and stuff, you now have got all this evidence you can pull together and say, oh yeah, actually we dealt with that question before. So I really appreciate you lot's new insights so far, new questions as well. Isaiah 14 verse 12, look what it says. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? Verse 13. Notice verse 13. For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. So this cannot be wrong in the sense of you knew what you was doing, you made a decision to go wrong. If he had no choice, then that choice to go wrong is on the head of the creator, because you use the word, I think it's Vince or Lyndon, the word wiring. If the wiring has gone wrong, then it's the creator's fault, and that's the only option we have. If we go down that road of no choice, then whatever goes wrong with the Bluetooth speakers, who do we blame? We don't go, you stupid Bluetooth speakers. We go to PC World and go, hey, I want my money back, fix it. We go to the manufacturers, the people who's selling the product, the providers, sort this out please, pay my money and then give it back to me. And so that's my thinking behind why I believe they had choice. Otherwise there's no infractions, they can't be blamed for the decisions that they've made. Now Chantel made a point about the mystery of iniquity. Let's just cover that, because that's a statement that we might hear, might take it for granted that we know where that's taken from. If you go to the book of Ezekiel 28, the mystery, Ezekiel 28, we're reading Ezekiel's account now of the fall of Lucifer. He became Satan, and Ezekiel gives us a little bit more, some other details we can add on to this. Ezekiel 28 and verse 12. Now, just to be clear here, because we're reading the Bible, right? What Ezekiel is doing here, he's using a king's name at the time to kind of superimpose what happened with Satan. So in Isaiah, you see Lucifer, how thou fallen from heaven. And in fact, that's the only place in the entire Bible the word Lucifer is used, in the King James anyway. It doesn't appear again, right? But in Ezekiel 28, when we read Tyrus, right, he's using that to superimpose what happened. And you're going to look, when you look at the details and the characteristics, this can only be describing Satan, right? So let's start from verse 12. It says, Son of man, take up a lamentation upon the king of Tyrus. Say unto him, Thus saith the Lord God, Thou sealest up the sum, full of wisdom, perfect in beauty. Look at the description in verse 13. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. So clearly now we're like, well, he's describing something that wasn't. We only read Adam and Eve and the serpent, right? Every precious stone was thy covering. But wait up. We're reading about a serpent. He said every precious stone was thy covering. The sardis, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, the carbuncle, and the gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day that thou was created. Tabrets is from a word similar to the word tabor, which is like a percussive instrument. Loads of cultures have a percussive instrument where they have a skin stretched over the circle. Some have tambourines on it. That's similar to a tambourine, a tabor, some kind of percussive instrument. That's where the word tabrets comes from. So he says, the workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes. And then he describes every precious stone was thy covering. So this being who was in Eden is a beautiful being. Now verse 14, here's the key. Can't be talking about a human being. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. So let me take you to my screen and give you a pictorial kind of illustration of this. Otherwise, it kind of just won't really make any sense. Cherub that covereth, all right? So, can you not see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, so we can, yeah, this one's big enough. All right. So here is a artist's impression of what a furniture piece that was placed in a building called the tabernacle. God commanded Moses to build a tabernacle in the wilderness, and then a more elaborate one was built later on by Solomon, and then, okay. But in the first tabernacle, there was a piece of furniture called the Ark of the Covenant, or the Ark of Testimony. The reason why it was called the Ark of the Covenant or the Ark of Testimony, because the tables of the Ten Commandments were called the tables of testimony, or the tables of the covenant, and these were placed inside the ark. And then Moses' laws were written on scrolls and were put in the side of the ark. Okay, now these two beings on the top were called cherubs. Okay, when God gave the instruction to Moses to make the architect to literally make this building and every piece of furniture, it was described to make the Ark of the Covenant. He described the cherubs. All right. Now we can read this that this Ark of the Covenant was literally an image or a picture of the throne of God. We can read this in Psalms 99. Psalm 99 and verse 1. Psalm 99 verse 1. Okay. Psalm 99 verse 1. Have we got that? All right. Now, if you're reading from another version other than King James, I believe let me check on the NLT before I say what I'm going to say. Psalm 99 verse 1. Oh, between cherubim. Okay, it says it in the NLT. All right, that's fine. Because I may be mistaken, but I know some other English translation doesn't have the word cherubim there for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm not experts but anyway. So Psalm 99 verse 1, it says, let me go back to the picture. Sorry. Psalm 99 verse 1, it says, the Lord reigneth, let the people tremble. He sitteth between the cherubims, let the earth be moved. He sitteth between the cherubims. So when this ark, you can read this in Exodus 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. You can read the blueprint, and it talks about the cherubs, that they should be facing one another, wings covering themselves. So, and they're different from seraphims. Okay, so the cherubs had wings, and then you see here in Psalms it says that God sits between the cherubims. So the Ark of the Covenant, the top, the lid was called the mercy seat. That was its actual name. That represented the throne of God in heaven, because we see two cherubs on the ark, and we see in Psalms, David says, God sits between cherubims. All right. Now, that language, thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. All right. In fact, let's go, because it's a study. Let's go to the book of Exodus. I need to let me put in King James, and let me find you the text. Let's just read that for any of you who might be taking notes. Okay, let's go to the instructions given to build the build the Ark of the Covenant. All right, here we go. So Exodus 25 verse 8. All right, and here, this is the instruction given on how to make the furniture. And thou shalt make 2 cherubims, 2 of gold, of beaten work shall thou make them, in the 2 ends of the mercy seat. All right, and verse 19 goes on to say, and make 1 cherub on the one end, and the other cherub on the other, and even on the mercy seat shall you make the cherubims on the 2 ends thereof. Verse 20, and the cherubims shall stretch forth their wings on high, and here's that word, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and their faces shall look one to another. Toward the mercy seat shall the face of the cherubims be. So here's an artist, because it's good to have an imagery when you're reading these kind of things. Otherwise, it's so abstract if you're reading for the first time. I mean, when I read this for the first time, it's like, what am I reading here? So you can see this is a kind of an attempt, and there's not one artist who's got this right, because notice it says the wing's supposed to cover the mercy seat. So the wing is supposed to be so huge. Some of them have maybe been 1 or 2 who may have kind of tried to gather the concept. This one might be a bit close here, right? It's a bit too small, that one. But this one, I don't know if you can see this one. This was trying to, the concept, you can see that it's really covering, but again, it's not covering the entire lid, the mercy seat. But that's tiny little finicky points. I don't like when people try to do art and they don't stick to the actual letter of what it's saying, because there's a reason. Anyway, it's not here or there. So the point is, go back to Ezekiel 28. So now you got an imagery in your mind when it says thou art the anointed cherub. That's the point I want to bring out. The anointed cherub. Anointed means chosen. He was chosen for this position, that covereth. So he held this position that we're seeing here, and because we read in Exodus 2, so you have 1, another one here, and then God in the middle. So we can surmise he held next to God the highest position in heaven, because he's right by the throne. You are the anointed cherub that covereth. Let's continue reading. Verse 14 is where we at. Continue reading. Thou art the anointed cherub. So that's what that word means. That's what we've just gone into. What is the cherub? What does it look like? Where is it in locality? This is all important. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. And thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. And here verse 15. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created till iniquity was found in thee. And there's that word. It doesn't say sin. It says iniquity. Now, this is important. It's just a tiny important thing. The word iniquity is different from transgression, right? And iniquity, transgression, what's the other one? I can't remember the other one. There's a third one that the Bible uses a lot as well. Transgression, iniquity, I can't remember. Anyway, so iniquity is not the same as transgression, but what's the difference between the two? Iniquity, when you look up that word, describes the intent behind the act, the motive behind the act. So, and also iniquity describes, when you look it up as well, willful, premeditated. Now, iniquity can be forgiven, so don't worry, people. But iniquity also describes premeditated. So premeditated, for me, it just simply means it's the intention behind it, the motive behind it. You've planned it, you want to go and do it, and then you've gone and done it. That's the word iniquity. Transgression could be sometimes willful, you don't know, whatever. But the Bible says he was perfect till iniquity was found in him. Now, let's go to the book of Thessalonians. And here is where that statement of the mystery of iniquity puts the two together, which is very interesting. The mystery of iniquity. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 7. Now, the context is something completely different than what we're discussing. All right, it's actually talking about Antichrist, the context. It's actually talking about Antichrist, and that's what's very interesting, but that's a whole complete different study, why you got this idea of the mystery of iniquity being described as the work of Antichrist, okay? But we're just looking at the verses here. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 7. It says, for the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. And here you have the mystery of iniquity. So it is what it is. Iniquity is a mystery. Why is iniquity a mystery? What is mysterious about it? What is unexplainable? When something's a mystery, it's unexplainable, or it's explainable up until a certain point, and then past that point you have no more answers. There are mysterious happenings, there are mysterious murders. You have evidence up until a certain point, but after that the murderer hasn't been found. We don't know how they did it or whatever. Mysteries can only be understood to a certain point. After that, there is literally no answers that can be given. So the question of why iniquity, or how did iniquity rise up in the heart of Lucifer, it's a mystery. It's unaccounted for. It's inexplainable. To explain it, and this is where it boggles people's minds. So if this boggles you, that's fine. If you have questions, that's fine. We can look at that. Why did he do it? To give an answer for that would be to excuse it. To give a reason would be to excuse it. Well, why did he do it? I say to my children this when they say, when we're doing worship and stuff, and they go, but Daddy, why we were studying somebody in the Bible, and they're very quick to be judgmental on them, like, but how could he do that, Daddy? I always respond, in jest, because they're my children. I don't want to, make them feel too bad, right? I want them to still get the lesson. But I always say in jest, why do you sometimes don't listen to Daddy? Why do you sometimes, want to keep your, don't want to share the computer or something? And they're like, oh, it's, what's right, but then sometimes you choose what is wrong. We know, I do understand that we're under different contexts and situations in that human nature and all that stuff, but still, what's everyone's thoughts on that point? Do you have any thoughts, any questions? Because it can be mind-boggling to be like, well, I want to know why though. If we don't, we can move on to the next point. Any thoughts or questions on that, on just that point, the mystery of iniquity?
Yeah, it's confusing for me because I think about the fact that God is perfect, and heaven was a perfect place, and it was complete love, and there was no, everything was in harmony. So it's completely confusing as to why it would have ever occurred if everything was as it should be.
Yep.
That,
Sorry, Shanta, did you finish?
that was all I was going to say. Yeah.
No, it is. For me, the only way that comforts me, no, not the word comfort. The only thing that settles the confusion, that's it. The only thing that's for me, this is what works. It might not work for anybody else, right? But this is what works for me. There's another mystery that's far more confusing than that one. For me. Go to the Bible, go to 2 Timothy. And thank you for being honest about that, Chantal, because it can be very, baffling. It's not, is it 2 Timothy? Sorry, it's 1 Timothy chapter 3 verse 16. There's another mystery in the Bible That's for me far more like, well, why? Let's just look at it. You see what I mean in a second. 1 Timothy 3 verse 16. We can stop sharing this now. 1 Timothy 3:16. Have we got it? All right. It says this. And without controversy, great is the mystery of what?
Godliness.
Godliness. Now let's read we've got mystery of iniquity. We've read where the iniquity first started in the heart of Satan, in the heart of Lucifer, sorry. Right? He became Satan through his fault. The mystery of iniquity. Now we're in the mystery of godliness. Now watch this. Let's continue reading. God was manifest in the what? The flesh. Justified in the spirit, seen of angels, preached unto the Gentiles, believed on in this world, received up into glory. The mystery of godliness. What do you think that means? Before we move anywhere, according to the passage, what do you think it's saying? The mystery of godliness. God was manifest in the flesh, blah, 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 blah. What's your thoughts, people?
Me again. I think it's pretty much saying, like, how can a sinful race, how can people who are bent on self and sin and death and destruction, how can they become like God? How can they be renewed? How can they live a life which is no longer sinful? Well, you know what I mean, working towards being more like Christ. How can we desire to put others before ourselves when all we want is, when in our sinful nature is to elevate ourselves and to get everything that we want and to sin? So how is that possible?
Exactly. Because notice it says the mystery of godliness. Godlikeness. That's what godliness is. Godlikeness, being like God. Right? Or the scripture talking about the godly. The godly are just those who obey him. He says the mystery of godliness. And then it says, God was manifest in the flesh. And this is what's really super, super deep. This is going to blow your head off. He's connecting the mystery of godliness with God being manifest in the flesh. Because without one, you don't have the other. It is Christ coming in the flesh that makes it possible for godliness to be restored. Or in other words, for Adam and Eve, what was in Eden before they fell, man to be made in the image of God again. To be like him, to reflect him again. That is a mystery. But let's look at more verses, because this mystery is expounded on by Paul in a few other places, right? It's the mystery of godliness. Okay, go with me to the book of Romans, I believe, Romans chapter 16. Romans chapter 16, and we're reading verse 25. 25, all right? And 26. Notice this. Now we're going deep, people. Get your snorkels on. Trust me. If your head hurts a little bit, don't worry, because this is we're looking at. This, I get excited now because this thing's just deep, right? But it's intensely practical, because this is about Christianity. This is the heart. This is the heart. This is where the power is. Jesus. But looking at what Jesus did, him coming as a man, well, and you're going to see why that is the heart. The without Jesus coming as a human being, there is no real Christianity. There is God. Well, so what? All these questions about how do I obey, all these questions about sin and why God allowed sin, it's all answered, summed in total, by this thing we're looking at right now. And you're going to see that in a second. Romans 16:25. Look what it says. Now to him that is of power to establish you according to my gospel and the preaching of Jesus Christ according to the revelation of the what? The mystery. Notice the preaching of Christ is in harmony with this mystery, the revelation of the mystery, which was kept secret since the world began. Wait. Since the world began, what we studying? I didn't plan this because I'm only going down here because of your questions. I hope you see the spirit moving. Right? I didn't plan this. I got no notes. My notes is only this. Right? I got no notes. What? Look, no notes. No notes. This is your question. That's why I get excited when we come with our questions, because God, that's when you enter a real proper study, because God's going to answer our questions, right? So look what it says. But now is made manifest and by the scriptures of the prophets, according to the commandment of the everlasting God, made known to all nations for the obedience of faith. If it wasn't for Christ coming, we couldn't obey. That's a mystery. Mystery number one. Why on earth? Yes, the mystery, the mechanics of Christ becoming a man is a mystery. But that's not what Paul is just focusing on. Look what he's saying. The revelation of the mystery, the preaching of Jesus Christ, according to the revelation of the mystery, for the obedience of faith. Yes, sir. Yeah. Hey, get my seat. Where is my seat? Go and ask Mary, because you lot must have moved it. For the obedience of faith. So, the only reason why Christ came, like we read in Timothy, the mystery of godliness. Look what it says. He says it's been made known to all nations for the obedience of faith. So the mystery of Christ coming in the flesh to save us, that is a mystery. It was kept secret from the world began. So let me put it like this. So God makes Adam and Eve, knowing that if they were to fall, Jesus is going to take the penalty. My question is, which settles my confusion as to God made a perfect heaven, in a perfect place, perfect environment, perfect creatures, and one decides to go against him. What settles my confusion is, alright, you foresaw the possibility of all that happening, but then you also foresaw that you was ready to lose part of yourself, your son. You were going to put yourself on the line, knowing the pain it was going to cause you. You were going to still go ahead with it. Why? Why would you do that? It makes no logical sense to me, with the foreknowledge of pain, of, you somehow that this person you're going to be introduced to might murder you one day. You're not going to even go down that road. Nope. Not going to become their friend. If that's what's going to happen, I'm going to stay away. I'm not going to introduce. Was it me introducing myself that made us become friends? Yeah, I'm not going to go. Like those movies, you can see into the future. If we had that ability, the foreknowledge, to see what someone was going to go do to you, it doesn't have to be even murder. It could be something even less than that, but hurt you really, really badly. Why would you still get married? If I knew that one day I had the foreknowledge my wife was going to hurt me, there's no way underneath the sun I would do it. No way. There's no way. Doesn't matter. And everyone would agree with me. Yeah, of course. Go and choose somebody who's not going to hurt you. Does that make sense? But then God, with the foreknowledge that there was the possibility that man could disobey, I'm still going to do it. Because for me, this is the key of Jesus. If you take Jesus out of the equation, the fall is God's fault. And what we're experiencing now is his fault. Because what's the solution? Where's the hope? Where's the savior? Then does that make, practically speaking, I'm putting my neck out on here, but I can't see no other way. If you take Jesus out of the equation, then the world, like people do view the world, God is hateful, he's vindictive, he's put us to suffer, life is hard, and then he judges us when we make mistakes, and he's not a man, he is God. That's logical. When you take Jesus out of the picture, that is your version of the world. It makes sense. That's why we have to not only learn about Christ, and surrender our lives to him when we see it makes sense to do so. But that's why we need to share Jesus as well in our lives, so people can see that is not the world that God has left just spinning in this cosmos. Oh, Lenny said makes sense. Any thoughts or questions at this juncture? Because we didn't even get nowhere, and it's already 9:14. But that's all right. That's all right.
Good evening, everybody. I came in late. I didn't realize you guys were ahead of me. So
no worries, Stuart, bro. No worries.
Yeah, I just came on, so I'm just trying to get my thoughts together. But yeah, it's very interesting. What came to mind is this: because God is the creator of all things, right? And obviously, when it talks about the mystery in 25 to 26 of, so it was it Romans 16?
Yeah, 16, 25, 26. Yeah.
It's like God, as I said, God is so magnificent. He knows us from the day we were born. So obviously, in the sense being that he knew this was going to happen, obviously because of, I just said about Satan and the iniquity, right? So he foresaw that was going to happen. But we as children here on earth, as you said, unless we have that relationship with Christ, we can't understand what he's put in place for us. Obviously, it's a mystery now what's going to happen next after this pandemic. But we know that he's also got a plan put in place for those who are faithful to receive the unknown mysteries. Because obviously, as it said, when we get to heaven, we'll be able to ask all these questions as to why was this took place and so forth. So I just said, I think because unless we have that relationship with Christ and get to have that same mindset, we are sort of like get confused or complacent.
Sorry, Stuart, my kids were asking me something. Rewind about 60 seconds.
Yeah, I was saying that we have to have that relationship with Christ in order to have that sort of same mindset to know what Christ's original plan was. And we can only get that plan if we're in tune with Christ to understand when he's talking to us, so what he needs us to do for, not only for ourselves, but for others, so they can get the same blessings that Christ has in store for us.
Right. Definitely. So, who has any thoughts or any questions so far on on what's been said? Oh, okay, let's go to Robert's got a text, Revelation 13:8. Oh yes, that's right. I didn't see where Robert's going. Revelation 13:8. Because in Romans we read, kept secret since the world began. So that's our link to our study, Adam and Eve. We were in Eden since the world began. This secret, if man should fall, there's already a plan. A plan had already been set down way before. Revelation 13 verse 8. You want to look at the last line. It says, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. Good text. Slain from the foundation of the world. So here again, that idea of the mystery of godliness, the mystery of godlikeness, was already pre-foreordained way before man should even fall. The God had already said, you know what? If man should fall, this is what we're prepared to do. This is what Jesus is prepared to do. For me, that settles the confusion as to why did Lucifer sin though? Why? That's never, for me, it can never get settled without understanding what was predetermined. It's not like God was, what? Oh, let's concoct a plan right now. And let me show you one more text on this that really helped me. And I'll never forget it. 1 John 3 verse 16. 1 John 3 verse 16. Man, we just scratched the surface. This is good though. Genesis 3:1 verse 1. We looked at, and God said. Did God say? That's what we're looking at. And we're here. These are my favorite type of studies, man. We need to do a part 2. 1 John 3:16. So notice what it says. Hereby perceive. That word perceive means to understand, to comprehend. Hereby perceive we the love of God Why? Because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. Notice, the love of God is hinged on what he did. Hereby we understand the love of God, because he laid down his life for us. That's how we understand God's love. So, if you take that out, it's a simple equation. Love of God, lay down his life. You take out lay down his life, which is you take out Jesus, all about Jesus not God in the flesh. What's a man then? And let me just touch on that for just a second, right? The idea that Jesus is just a man, we make mistakes debating with people on the mechanics of that. We lose sight of the meaning, the beauty, and how it destroys the gospel. No, he is. Go to that verse. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your time, because you could refute the argument very simply like this: who have we sinned against? And those who have that argument usually are Muslims, right? God. Okay, so who can forgive you? God. Okay, so how can he send somebody else that's not himself to do the work of forgiveness? That's one argument. If I've harmed Lyndon, yes, his mum might be angry with me because Lyndon and his mum are obviously related. He's the son, so she's going to get hurt, and I may need to seek forgiveness from the mum. But if I need to actually go to Lyndon and get forgiveness from him. So if we've sinned against God, we need forgiveness from him. But still, that doesn't answer the question as, but why the penalty? Why the sacrifice? Because Muslims believe you could just be forgiven. Like God just does this. That's what Allah's doing. I forgive you. But why the penalty? Well, we understand why the penalty. Well, let's go back to the beginning. Genesis chapter 3. God says, if you eat of the tree, ye shall surely what? Die. Wait up. Let's go back to the beginning. What tree did they have open access to? Let's go to the beginning. Genesis 3. Go to the beginning. Watch this. Genesis 3. What tree did they have open access to? If you know it, just shout it out. Well, type it out.
Tree of life, innit?
The tree of life. And when they sinned, go to verse 23, I believe. Go to verse 23. And 24. Look at verse 24. Genesis 3:24. I want you to see this. After they sinned, so he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, we've seen what that is, and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the what?
Tree of life.
Tree of life. So there are some implications we can extrapolate from this event. The fact that God barred the tree of life said you have no access to life. Well, it makes sense. I've breathed life into your nostrils. So law and obedience equals life. It is life. Obedience is life itself. Obedience, and this is why religion is so dangerous. Meaning, when I say religion, meaning when we turn what God says into religious things, rites and ceremonies and things we have to do to be saved, and you have no concept of what sin is then, and obedience. You're never going to enjoy what obedience is. So it's going to seem like a burden because it's a religious instruction God has told you to do. No, why don't you see it as life? Life itself. Literally. Right? Life itself. If I'm speaking discouraging words all the time, does that person want to live in my house? No, they don't. And if they have to live in my house, they might get to the point where they don't even want to live. That was only the words. That's just words. Do you see? When fathers don't take care of children, there are possibilities that children want to take their lives. We can go on and look at so many actual real examples. When we don't follow what God says, it actually takes away life, like this life we're talking about. So it actually makes sense when God says the wage of sin is death. There is no other option. He's the life giver. So if I don't want to follow you, what right do I have to life.
Hmm.
Literally, what right do I have? Did I put myself here? So there can be no other option that if we break the law of God, the only penalty is death itself, because that's the only way to deal with disobedience.
I think in a way that having death is actually a merciful thing. If you think
Amen.
about, like, if people were able to sin for eternity and it could just keep going and going and going, that would be just crazy.
Yep.
So
Very.
as much as
Mm.
death is like it's a sad thing, it's actually merciful.
Amen. That's a
That's
very,
true.
very big point. It's so merciful, and this is that's such a deep point, and that,
Mm.
yeah, that's a deep point. I don't want to add on to that. That's a deep point, and so when me growing up in the church, I saw the law as literally just that, the law. I'm like, but why death? That seems so extreme.
Mm.
Because obviously there are things that don't make you die straight away. I was like, man, why would God one day just be like, yeah, you can't live? No. You have no right to live. And as I started to understand, when I gave my life to Christ, and then I saw love, and I started to understand the principles of selfishness, the principle of love in contrast to selfishness. And you think, but then look what selfishness does. Look what this does. Look what this. You can't deal with sin no other way. It will actually kill itself. It will murder itself eventually. It will ruin the very. You give someone the best woman in the world, who don't have love in their heart, they will ruin it. You give someone, like a nice car, but they can't drive. Look at not being able to drive as the inability to obey God without Jesus. You give them a nice Lamborghini with, I've seen videos on YouTube, right, with people in supercars, and they speed run, they take off around the corner really slowly. And as they go around the corner, all you see the car, the back just go, just lose control, and they go bang. Now, people who don't drive are confused when they watch that. They go, I don't understand. Why did he crash? Or why did she crash? He was only going around the corner, and all of a sudden you see him go, boom. It's because the throttle's so powerful, and because they don't know how to drive, they put it down like a normal car. Like in a normal car, you put your foot down. Certain cars, you don't. It just nicely, like, just drives off. In cars like that, you put your foot down, what you normally do in an everyday car, the back just 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. What do you expect?
Yeah, that's mad.
So it just shoot, bang, can't drive. So God wants to give us the Lamborghini. Is that, but you need your driver's license. You need to learn how to drive. Because if I put you in this thing the way that you are right now, you're gonna kill yourself.
Yeah, we've got a Ford Fiesta mentality, man. We can't have a Lambo.
And so I just wanted to remind us about when God says the wage of sin is death, it's not a rule he's arbitrarily just said. If you look at him, like, he is life itself. He put breath in Adam's literal nostrils. And that's why I like Genesis, because it's in the imagery we can see, okay, he's living. All right, here's a tree. And he goes, in essence, I don't want to follow you. So why should God allow him to live? You answer me that question. Parents do this now. They get in a situation where their son or their daughter are hanging around with people that's no good. And the lifestyle is bringing danger to the family now. They're trying and they're trying and they're trying, and the son does not want to listen to what the parents are saying. They want to hang around with the criminals. They want to do criminality, and the parents are like, you're not listening. Why should you have the right to free food, electricity, and you're putting us in harm's way, and we're going to continue feeding you and feeding you and feeding you? I mean in harm's way. I'm not talking about, they're bad and you get kicked out for just being naughty. For me, I'm talking about me personally as a parent. I don't like that illustration. The illustration is if it's harm's way, right? Because that's the only time I could kick my children out. If whatever they're doing outside is putting us in actual physical danger. And I mean, they're siblings. Do you see? Me, I can take care of myself, but not my wife. Do you see? If I was a single parent, I'd be like, yeah, come now. What? Come now, you ain't taking my son. Right? Take my baby back. Right? But my wife is there. I can't be having wars and die. That doesn't make no sense. I have to think rationally. So if they were doing that, one of them, I'd be like, look, you can't, the police have been round. People have thrown bricks for our house because they want to get you. And you're putting your siblings in harm's way. You either cut this lifestyle off or you leave. Because you ain't listening. So the consequences is spilling over. For me, that's what sin is. It's like you can only deal with it by death. There's no other choice. So going back to the question of why Jesus makes sense, why it had to be God coming in the flesh to die, because one, you've sinned against him, so he's the one that needs to forgive you, but the penalty itself is death. So he's the one that has to come down and take the penalty. So without Jesus, there is no forgiveness. Without Jesus, there is no reconciliation. Without Jesus, there is no real understanding of why it's so serious to disobey God. Without Jesus, there is no perceiving of why he loved us. And so the Adam and Eve story that we're looking at, we've only looked at verse 1, the Adam and Eve account, it just looks like God is to blame, because where's the hope? Where is where is the hope? Because we're here now. And that's why a lot of people say, if it wasn't for Adam and Eve, because Jesus is not in the equation of the world's history. God looks very unfair. And yeah. Oh, any questions or any thoughts before we close? It's 9:30, been here an hour and a half.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
Anton, sorry, bro, I was so far.
Oh, Anton's here.
Yeah. You little Chinese
Anton, big up.
Yes.
Oh, Luke as well. Yes, Luke, brother. And Aaron. Hey, Aaron. Man, quite a few people came. I was so focused, just zoomed in.
I didn't see anyone coming. No, you see their name at the top, innit?
Yeah, they're deaf. Yeah, man. Luke and Aaron, welcome. Sorry, go on, Lyndon.
That's cool.
And Stuart. Yeah. I said hello to Stuart already.
I think you did. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Now, I just wanted to go off because something that Chantal said when you was talking about death and how it's actually merciful, like, because there's so much more that comes with sin than just dying. It's like, I don't know who broke it down, or even if I was having a conversation in this forum, but it's like, there's so much that comes with like doing your own thing, because there's different ways to like an ideal situation. So happiness, like in terms of, or let's not say happiness then, because it's not relative. Let's say pleasure. Yeah, there are different ways to get pleasure, like say getting a house. Yeah, it's a pleasurable situation to be in. Now you can steal someone's home and there's ramifications that come with that. Like, for example, when you're hearing songs about man them getting chinged up, this, that, and the third, and you know, man runs this block and I can run into anyone's block and take this and take that, take man's girl in the bando doing this and that. And it's like, yeah, but what about the fact that you can't go within a certain radius of your area? What about the fact that you keep looking over your shoulder? Yeah. What about the fact that every time you hear sirens, yeah, or someone says your name, you got to look around? What about the fact that you always got to carry something on you? You know what I'm saying? What about the fact that you hardly sleep because you're always on the road? Or the PTSD that comes with that, anxiety and depression, all of that. Right? So it's like, in every situation, sin, it kills you before it kills you.
That's deep. Yes.
So
yeah.
That's why there's certain times that I was having a conversation in a Clubhouse forum, right, about Psalms 37, and how God says, don't worry about them and what they're doing and how they prosper in their way when they're doing this and that and the other. And I was thinking, yes, man, because you're consumed. Yeah, God is trying to take the attention off you so you don't become like them and kill them off. But there's another thing. The worst thing that you can give someone who's in sin is a long life. Because it's not pleasurable.
Wow, that's so deep. That's so true.
That's the worst thing you can give them. We're thinking about it on the side because, like, and I know this because, in fact, all of us know this because we had this when we were in sin, right? We hated ourselves when we wanted to be like God. Yeah, we wanted to do what God said, but there was no power in us to do it. Yeah. And here's the thing, Ephesians 2 says that we were dead in that situation. We were dead already. So knowing that, then the state of our minds, we didn't even want to live inside our own minds. I didn't want to be inside my body when I was doing the things that I didn't want to do and I had no power to do it. It's like I was living in an alien body. I don't want to do this, but something's taken over my body. That's sin. So imagine now, yeah, someone who's evil, yeah, and they live forever in their sin, and you want to die, but you can't. Nah, that is horrific. That would be worse than some people's conception of what hell would be. Yeah, I'd rather burn for an eternity, right, in smoke and whatever, than live forever in paradise, yeah, and just keep mashing up the whole system, and God can't even punish me. And I want to be punished. I know I deserve punishment. I know I must die, but I can't. Nah, forget that. That's the worst scenario I could ever think of. I wouldn't want anything.
There's even
I wouldn't wish that my worst enemy.
There's even something I read in a book called Steps to Christ.
Yeah, Chantal, happy Sabbath. She's gone.
Yeah. Oh, she's gone. There's a book I read in there's a quote I read in a book called Steps to Christ where it says, if God could bring the sinner to heaven, they'll be miserable.
Yeah.
And when I first read it, I was like, nah, man, I don't get it. No, they wouldn't. They'll want to change, or they'll enjoy it. And then when I started to understand just through life experience what our natural hearts, when you're not surrendered to Christ, what it actually loves and what it actually likes, it actually sees kindness as weakness. Like I've been in situations where I've shown mercy, and man them around me be like, "You're an idiot." They're vexed.
Yeah.
They're actually more vexed than the criminal who just done it. Like now the anger's turned on me. Do you see what I mean? Like, well, what? They stop being angry with this person, and they're like, "What could you do? How could you?" They don't get it. They just don't get it. Now I get that. I would have thought that as well back in the day. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So Acton, go on.
Last week though, last week when you was talking about like how your sin is like the east to the west from you.
Oh, when God forgives.
Yeah.
It's
like you see these people, like they are like, you see what Uncle was saying earlier on about sinning, like the devil with iniquity, and that, yeah, if his throne is iniquity and that's his throne and that's what he stands by, it's like, and those guys who have these mindsets that you can even do something which is good and they actually are repulsed by that, the reason that they feel like that about you is because you're as far away from them as you could possibly be to them.
That's deep.
So it's like,
that's deep.
It's deep because it's like,
yeah, you're not like them at all, is it?
You're not like them at all, but it's like, even like, this is gonna sound crazy, but if like any Dragon Ball Z guys who watch Dragon Ball Z or whoever watched that,
I've seen it.
like, do you know Frieza now, yeah? Like they put Frieza went to hell, yeah, in inverted commas, yeah, but it was a beautiful paradise. It was like,
and he hated
butterflies everywhere. She was in a cocoon, yeah, but Frieza was in a cocoon, yeah, and was absolutely miserable. Like everything's beautiful.
Right.
So the birds are singing, there's zero destruction, things are peaceful, the birds, everything, blue sky, everything's lovely. But this destroyer is absolutely miserable. This is where she's supposed to be spending the rest of eternity, in this peaceful place. Right. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. But she was not satisfied with that in any respect. So from what you just said there, like it's a hard thing to think of, but that's like there's even illustrations which we've even seen in our day-to-day lives of like experiences on how that actually suits up, how it actually matches up. And then another thing I was going to say is about what you said about the tree of life. It's an unbelievable concept to even think of, to think that these guys had the opportunity at having life, yeah, that they had the tree of life that was open to them. They could have had that at any point along with the other fruitage that they was eating from. They decided not to eat from that fruit. And then after that, like you said, like the cherubims were put there to protect it. They could have been there from the beginning. They could have been there at the other side saying, nah, don't eat from the tree of knowledge of good. But they weren't. They weren't there. You know what I'm trying to say? Like they was there afterwards. So what you're saying is that around like what's surrounding life, like life in itself and how life is like attached to like obedience and like and to God, and how Jesus is like that midpoint. Like that's the only fathomable explanation. That's why we've got the Bible, so that we can even get that. Because it's like the Bible, like with the whole story with Adam and Eve, and like Noah and all of these different things which has happened. God knows that man, the heart of man is desperately wicked. He's already told us that. He knows that stories are going to be changed here and there, and Chinese whispers, and your mind will be going off here and there. We could be seeing it broad day, like you guys have already showed me, man. Like, you know, like it could be miracles or whatever. It could be whatever in our daily challenges with whatever. We still don't have enough faith, like period, just to do like basic things, if you know what I'm trying to say. We do, but we don't at the same time for our flesh, innit? And it's like he knows all of that. So it's like taking all of that into consideration, he gave us, like you see, like Adam and Eve and how he's told the story and what he's told them to put in there. That is as much of the story as you need to know to get the right results and to get the right understanding of what is going on. Right. He's not saying that this is everything that's happened. He's not taking a pen and giving you a biography of every individual incident which has happened in the past history and what exactly was happening, but he's giving you the full body, the full meat of the essence of who he is, what he stands for, what he won't tolerate, what he does stand for, what he likes, and who he is, innit? So it's like it's then for you to then understand, like, this is what it is now, this is what I'm giving to you, and let's go through this together, because the same way that he taught his son everything, because I was walking down the road like last week, the sky was open. I love to see these stars, and I love to see them. It's amazing, and you say they've polluted the sky now, but you still get to admire what's up there. And I was thinking, teach my son, like, oh yeah, 1, 2, 3, you know, teach him the times tables. Oh, this is blue, this is red. And I'm thinking, like, hold on a minute. God was teaching Jesus what that star's name is. All of these stars, and I can't even count them. Jesus knows them by name. He knows them not only, like, if you know someone by name, you know them by their nature. So, like, the moon controls our waves. Right. So it's like, he understands the moon by not only what its purpose is, but also what it is. So it's like a personal thing. So it's like he's being taught those things.
Right.
We still have to be taught those things. You know what I'm trying to say? Maybe not that in a sense, but we have to be taught, like you said, like with life, obedience, the law, what kind of attributes he has, who we are, what our duty is with him. You know what I'm trying to say? So yeah, man, that does have me thinking, man. There's a clear contrast between, like, you know, like people who even want to acknowledge Christ in the sense of what he's done, for whether they want to put him down to living in history, or whether they actually want to put him down to, like, actually being God's son and actually looking at the sacrifice what he's putting up for them.
Right. Yeah, man. Vince, you can be alive but spiritually dead. That's deep. That's a deep point, man. But look, man, we only got to verse 1, Genesis 3. And did God say, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? So we'll continue that next week, because the question we're looking at is, what must I do? Lessons from Adam and Eve. What must I do? And it's from a question, the soldier who was looking, one of the guards, prison guards, when, was it Peter, Paul and Silas, I believe, and the angels opened the prison doors, and he thought they'd run away, and then said, no, we're still here, man, because you're going to kill himself. He said, don't do that, we're all still here, because obviously it would have been a capital punishment for him to allow prisoners to escape, so he was just going to do himself over quickly, so you're gonna have to go through that. He says, no, we're still here. And then they preached to him Jesus, and he says, and his household as well. And that meant they would have had a good couple sessions of teaching them the faith. And then he asked the question, what must I do to be saved? What must I do? What must I do? So we're looking at that question, but from Adam and Eve's perspective, because that's the beginning. That's where the first human being sinned. What did God do, if anything? I don't want to give it away for those of you that already know the story, but what did God do, if anything, to save them? And when we analyze that carefully, we don't only just learn about the tempter, which is why I like Genesis 3. In fact, it's one of my favorite parts of the Bible. Why we don't just learn about how Satan works, because he came there, everything hanged on him trying to get her to fall, and Adam and Eve, right? I mean Adam, sorry, as well, right? So we're going to continue looking at that, and then we'll continue to unpack that question: what must I do to be saved? But look, man,
that's interesting.
Sorry,
Mike. So just before you finish, it's interesting that I'm glad you said that, because I wasn't here from the beginning. But it's nice that you're looking. It's nice that you're looking at that we're looking at that question from that standpoint, because it's like we've just established through Chantal that even when as sinners in heaven, we wouldn't want to be there in it, and that while we're alive, we can still be dead, and that sin kills us before we die, physically.
It's killing us.
But then this God in Paul's day has seen prisoners and heard them, and it's like, now the want is, I want to be like you guys. How is it that you lot are physically imprisoned but are free?
Yep.
So the gospel is like the complete opposite.
Yep.
Yeah. Where even when we die, we're not dead.
But that's it. Yeah.
Wait. Say that piece again. I missed the last piece.
It's like,
even when we die. Sorry, go on, Lyndon, go on.
So salvation works in the complete antithesis to sin, whereas, even though you might not be in any cell, right, you're imprisoned in sin, right, and that you're dead even when you're alive, and kills you long before you're dead. But then
salvation,
this salvation, like what the God witnessed in, it wouldn't be Acts. I don't know what book it's in.
Yeah, it was in Acts.
Oh, yeah. Where Paul and the man them are in prison, right? But
free.
Say again.
They're free.
Yeah, they're in prison, but they're free.
They're
and it's so like
praises,
when he,
singing.
Exactly. So it's like after Paul said to him, "Now we're all here," and he says, "What must I do to be saved?" It's like he's looking at them thinking, "I want what you lot have. Like you lot are free, and you're singing praises, to God, even though you're in prison." So salvation has the complete antithesis of sin, where even though one might be physically imprisoned, you're still free. And even when you're dead, you still have eternal life.
You still have eternal life. Beautiful, Lyndon. Beautiful.
And that's the complete opposite of sin.
Opposite of sin.
Because when you're alive,
that's how you know that in a way that you've been forgiven and whatever else with. Oh, beautiful.
You get me? So that's why it made me laugh, man. It made me laugh because it's like, not even. It's like, it's literally the complete opposite. When you're in sin, you're alive, but you're dead. When you're in Jesus, you're dead, but you're still alive. It's deep, man. So I'm glad you looked at it in the comparison of that, because the Spirit led us down that road, and it's just given me the complete picture in it. And again, it's still like, even though we're talking about Adam and Eve and that, even this point still has its roots in Jesus. You can't get it. It's like Jesus is the magnet that just pulls every single point in debate and argument, discussion, everything. You just get to Jesus again every time.
Yeah, he's like the point of like how well something I recently came across with you guys really, but like that Jesus is the God in the flesh. Like something that you were saying earlier on, Mike, like it had me kind of thinking like when we're talking about death, he had to die, but nobody in this flesh could die for the weight of what it was. So only he could he'd have to be on both sides of that. So it's like he knows, oh, I'm gonna have to carry this for these lot. These lot can't carry this. So I'm gonna have to switch it up, go down there, hold this, and then come back and then wait for them to come back. That's deep.
Yo, you lot. Who's Adriel Halliday?
Oh, that's my cousin, man. That's my cousin.
All right, cool.
She said that she's gonna try and jump on after her other study, innit? Because these I've got one that starts at 7:30.
All right, okay.
So her and my auntie try to jump on this one, but I told them to just jump on if they've got a few minutes afterwards, just in case we run over a few. We can get.
Yeah, it's sorry to interrupt. It's just finishing now. We're just praying, and I'm just logging in now.
Oh yeah.
They're just praying to finish.
All right, cool.
Wait for us.
These are finishing though. Yo, my bad.
It's all right. Yeah. Yeah. Any other points? That's a deep point. That's a deep point, Lyndon. It's a really deep point. Yeah. So because it's. Yeah, I just thought it's a good place to start, in it. Going back to the beginning. Going back to the very beginning, because the beginning explains everything. Do you see the history?
Beginning, innit?
Yeah, you go back to the beginning, you get the firm foundation, because when you get the firm foundation in the beginning, it sets the tone throughout the whole Bible. When you don't really understand the beginning, there are parts of the Bible that just really won't really make any sense. And what I said at the start was that's why you get an idea. Some people have an idea of good God, bad God, Old Testament God, vindictive, punish you just like that. And Jesus, oh man, he's loving and merciful. They don't see any kind of harmony.
Scary doctrine though, Mike, man. Scary doctrine, that, because it's like we already know from the text, bro. God doesn't change.
Yep. Yeah, it's true. It is. It's just, but I just put it down to just a gross misunderstanding and not kind of just studying to see that harmony. It's a gross misunderstanding. So Genesis, it's the beginning. You kind of see, you don't see that, and it's in the Old Testament. You see, so and because it's the beginning, and we're dealing with real people, you're seeing how God is dealing with Adam and Eve, and you can take that with you into our own personal experience. Sorry, Anton, was you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that on the back of that, like for me, like there were certain things in Genesis which I just completely, I was just raised with the wrong stick. I was raised with the wrong guidance stick, man. It was a bent stick, bro. Because the honest truth is, when I've gone back, it's true, bro. It was a bent stick, bro. Because when I've gone back and I've looked at the text, bro, I'm reading, and it's like, right now this is starting to fit into place with the general idea of it's already shown me. Like it's not. You see, like with God's, like with the Bible, right? It's all well and good. You can go and try and tamper with it. Yeah, you might be able to try and tweak a few scriptures to try and suit your doctrine or suit what you're trying to say. You might be able to use your old couple scriptures, to back up what you're saying and use it in a context which kind of favors what you're trying to say. But when you're actually going through that Bible and you really start to go through it and look at it, and you're actually just looking at and reading it, what you're reading, believe it or not, you are going to come undone, because that Bible does not contradict itself. That Bible is specific, highly specific. And what I've realized is, bro, yeah, there's a lot of individuals and religious groups that are very, very, very cunning in how they change certain areas of the beginning of the Bible, man. And for me, really and honestly, man, I think it's kind of a undervalued book, Genesis. I think it kind
That's
of
a-
goes
that's a
under
deep
the
point.
radar, you know, in the beginning, like, oh yeah, the beginning, oh, we already know that Adam and Eve, it's like, hold on a minute. Let's just get the core principles of actually the fundamentals, like you said earlier on, there's fundamentals there, which I've never heard before, the thy fundamentals. Let's get the fundamentals here. Let's actually see what was. Because believe it or not, that was the only time where things were actually good.
Mm,
That's the only time in our existence where things have been good. So
Mm.
it's like, if that was good, let's take note and let's stick to the text, innit? Because little things that I came across, like me and Andrew was talking before, and we was talking about the giants and whatnot. I had the wrong interpretation of that, unfortunately, for many years. And through having that wrong interpretation, and you're undermining God's character. You're undermining his values. You're undermining his, like you said, like if you've done something wrong, Lyndon, you're gonna have to go and seek something with Lyndon. You can go to his mum and say apologize and whatnot, and she can
Yeah.
say, "Look, I'm really grateful for your apology, and I'm gonna tell him." And you know he can be grateful and tell her that. But until you see him, that
That's
gratitude
right.
ain't really gonna be reciprocated.
That's
And
right.
it's like,
That's it.
with this right now, he's not gonna give you a weight or a price that you don't deserve. Like he's in a sense of that if he's giving you a gift, right? A gift is something that you didn't deserve. If he's merciful, you've done things, and he's not even going to punish you for what you deserve. At what point is he then going to give you a problem and make you have to deal with things that you haven't even been the cause of or had any involvement in? It just completely goes against everything in which he says he is and does. So it's
Right.
just that we have to iron out these basic things that people might think is just, you know, baby food or whatnot, or that maybe, I don't know, they've been in the church for years and they don't really need to hear it again. But I think there's no amount of hearing it that can ever make it resonate with you anymore, because it's just that you're always going to learn something new with this.
Right. Right.
That's
Yeah,
me.
man.
Inexhaustible, man.
Inexhaustible.
Just
Inexhaustible.
quickly, and is it Andrea?
Yeah, that's
Andrea.
Angel, man. That's my cousin.
Welcome, Andrea. We're kind of
Hi,
finishing up.
sorry guys.
Welcome.
No, no
Sorry,
worries,
I'm a
man.
bit
Yeah,
Don't
man.
apologize.
She's very
I put my
enthusiastic,
bonnet
man.
on.
She's
Hey,
very
man, that's cool, man. We now
So
have Black
good.
Women's
Happy
Day, man.
Sabbath, happy Good
Got the B-rag, man.
Friday.
Yeah, man.
Happy
Happy
Sabbath.
Sabbath, happy Good Friday. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Now, I was just saying, Andrea, that we're kind of just
wrapping up.
finishing up. Really, we're just kind of like I'm just listening to everybody else's points based upon what we've done, because we started at 8, so that's no problem. So welcome,
Right,
man.
what
Welcome.
was
This
your
is
lot
what-
study
because I had
about,
another
though?
Bible study that starts at 7:30, so they both clash, and it's so
No
hard
worries.
because me and my mum always want to come this one, but we can't jump on both. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
difficult.
What was your lot's Bible study about tonight?
Today it was on Cain and Abel, Genesis chapter 4. Yeah,
Yes.
so we did that today, and then next week it will be Daniel.
Okay.
How,
Cool.
how funny is that though? What was that, random or was that planned?
It was planned from last week. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Why? What was you guys saying anyway? That was Misty. So, and I really want to jump on these ones.
We were doing Genesis chapter 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We
So
were neighbors.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing Genesis chapter 3. So the title of the study is "What Must I Do? Lessons from Adam and Eve." So
Okay.
the question of what must I do to be saved, but we're taking that question and looking at it from the angle of Adam and Eve, because it's the beginning. So because it's the beginning, that will lay a firm foundation. I believe Genesis 3 lays a firm foundation for the entire Bible. How God dealt with Adam and Eve. Man sinned, Satan is there. So you got temptation, you got cunning, you got lies, you got God dealing with Adam and Eve. I don't want to give away what he did later on for those of us who haven't looked at it before, but a lot of people think Adam and Eve were lost. But when you read Genesis 3 very carefully, you'll see that's not really the story. And because of that, you've got the first promise there, the promise of hope. So you've got so many ideas right there in the beginning that sets the entire the narrative, for the entire Bible as to who God really is. When you look at people take it for granted. Oh, I know Adam and Eve felt. That's not God didn't waste his time telling us that in the very beginning. So I felt important for us to go through Genesis 3. We're looking at Genesis 3, but we only looked at verse 1 of Genesis 3. We didn't even
Never look.
yeah. So
Yo, Mike,
yo,
the mystery of not the mystery, the enmity, lessons on faith with A.T. Jones and E.J. Wagner. Yo,
Look at this
Are you
guy's
reading that?
face,
Okay.
yo. Send me the link, bro. What is it, big?
yo, Mike, if you, I beg you, you, Anton would absolutely eat up this book.
Alright, yo, send it to me.
I've read it
later,
already. I've read it loads of
I
times.
haven't read all of it yet.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll send
you
you
can send it
because
time
it's a
to our
PDF.
PDF. Yeah,
Yeah,
you send
yeah,
it.
Is it reading material or video?
Now
So
read
Yeah,
what
it.
Andrew.
did everyone get from then chapter 3 verse 1?
Okay, so a recap. I give you a recap. So the first question was the question I asked to everybody was, what's wrong with the question? I said, many of us make an assumption that it's just a question. Did God say you shouldn't eat of every tree of the garden? And then we actually analyzed it closely and we found, no, that's not what God said. When you go to chapter 2, verse 16, God actually commanded them saying, of every tree of the garden you can eat, but not this one.
Oh.
So he starts with a positive, not a prohibition. Satan, the serpent, when he comes to Eve, his question is designed to focus on the prohibition. That's a negative. God, when he, we're not switched it, just focused on a prohibition. So he's focused on the question is designed to focus you on the prohibition. That's a nuance, a subtle difference that's key. Because, and the analogy I gave was, you go to your parents and say, Mum, and they know you're going to get married. Say, Mum and Dad are going to get married in 3 months. And your parents give you good reasons and say, look, we want you to get married in 6 months. You go to your friends and you tell your friends, oh, you lot have to get married in 6 months. And one of your friends say, why did your parents say you can't get married? You see the difference? See where the focus is. And then you respond and say, nah, they say I can get married in 6 months. And your friend says, yeah, but, and gives their reasons. And you go, And you start to be swayed and look at all of the reasons why you should get it in 3 months. And now you come back to your parents and say, why can't I get married? They didn't say that. They said 6 months. So when he comes to Eve and says, did God say you can't eat of every tree? You can't eat of every tree. It solicited a response that now the conversation is on what she can't do. When the command, you can eat of every tree, included, when you read verse 8 and 9, included the tree of life. So imagine God brings Adam and Eve before them, and the first thing he says to them is not, which is what even people who don't read their Bibles think God just went, you can't eat the tree. And so what is the idea of God that you get? Prohibition, can't do. And that's the idea people have of religion. That's people have of Christianity. You can't do this, you can't do that, can't do this, can't do that. Oh, I can't do this. If I become Christian, I have to give up all these things. I ain't ready for that yet. I ain't ready for that, man. Let me wait. When I'm old and I don't have no desires for women, then I'm coming. Let's be real. That's what people are waiting for, man. Then all these desires I have for pleasure, when them dead, then I'll come. When they
That's
die
like me.
off.
Like when I was younger, I was like, do you know what? I got baptized quite young, so I was like, I'll go and do the ways of the world, and then when I get older, then I'll like recommit my life to Christ,
That's
and
right.
then I'll do this, and then I'll follow because then it's true. It's the way. I think the church is so old school. It's the way we kind of tell people this is how it should be, and it's very negative, and it's not. God's word's not actually negative, but then
That's it.
the way they deliver it is very negative. So you have this false mentality, and then it's like a domino effect.
That's it. Exactly. So we can see that idea then coming through. That's from Satan. That's from the devil. You know, presenting the prohibition first to her mind, but it's covered in a question. Did God say you can't eat of every tree?
You know what that reminds me of, Mike? That
Yes,
reminds me of, like, you know, yet again last week when you were talking about clarifying, like, hearing God's voice. It's like when doing things, and when we've fallen away or whatever it is that we may have done, does it lead us back to Christ like that?
Right.
Is it leading us straight back? You know what I'm trying to say? Because everything
Right.
he's doing, everything his voice is saying, it's straight back to him. Which
Right.
means that obviously the first thing that you're going to be hearing is music to your ears, because it's going to be appealing, because it's what he's saying to you. Even if it's not nice, it's still what you know what I'm trying to say? What you
Right,
need, not
right.
what you want.
Right.
I think, yeah, that kind of shows that yet again, bro. Like, yeah, it's just, you see, all things of Christ is just all consistent. And that's what I've now seen of Christ, what you guys have now showed me so that I can see to him. It's like he's super consistent, bro. I never saw this consistency before, because I was hearing what people's claims were of him and not what my claims are on who he is on a fact basis.
Right.
You know what I'm trying to say? Because what you say of him is fact. If you
Right.
know what I'm trying to say, because of what
Right.
you know what he's done for you.
Right.
That's not your opinion, what he's done for you.
Right.
That's a fact.
Right. Right.
Who he is and what he's done for you is fact. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
It's not like, oh, well, Christ might, that's your opinion. But what he's doing for you and what you know he is and what he has done for you, you can't ramp. Consistent, bro. The only thing that's not consistent is us.
Right. Right. Good point. That's a valid point. So, what was the next point we made? So we were just looking at that verse 1, but then new questions came up, which is why we never got past verse 1, because I made a point. I made a statement, and the statement I made that led us down other questions, which were good questions, was the fall of Satan must have happened by this time, because he's by the tree tempting Eve. So I asked the question, why will God make Adam and Eve in that context, knowing that there's a tempter out there, knowing that there's one of his child has gone rogue, and he's like this, anyone on God's side I'm going to take out. That's the context. It's like you knowing there's danger, going, well, I'm going to put my dogs outside, knowing there's wolves out there.
Yeah, because he's God. He's God.
Well, saying he's God doesn't answer the question, though, innit, Anton? Because it seems unfair, innit? Because you have to be... Imagine Adam and Eve are children in the sense of experience, innit? And he's created them, and it's like... But then you got this wild animal who's ready to do whatever it takes to cause their downfall, innit? What was in God's mind? What was he thinking, knowing that's the context, innit? So that was the question that led on to other questions as to, and then we went down that road, which is why we never got past verse 1.
If you've got a lion, yeah, and they've got they've got cubs, it's like at some moment that lion has got to let off those cubs and say, you've got to go and hunt. Now the Lord has given them the opportunity. He said, listen, everything's good, I've put you here, now you've even got a mate. I've given you what you need. I've given you the tools. You're good. All you need to do is listen to me.
Right.
Like, he's given them the good share. Now, obviously, he knows. Well, I think, in my opinion, the devil was already rogue already before he's even come down and done what he's done. He was already rogue because it was in his heart.
Yeah, definitely.
My man's just finally acted upon it for this time. This current occurrence. I don't think this is new to my mind. In my opinion, like it doesn't seem like it's new to my mind. But that's just speculation. But it's like you said earlier on about it could be seen like God would be basically like feeding them to the lions in that sense, potentially.
Yeah, it would seem so.
Like, would that not be the fair thing for him to do for them? Like, because it's like.
Well, let me ask this question.
What is he supposed to do? Like, what is he supposed to do? Does not, like, you can't, you know, what if you're going to give somebody life and you're going to give them freedom of choice, then you can't then go and be like, oh, well, I'm not going to give you freedom of choice. Then you're contradicting who you are and what you are. So I don't really see it as not fair for him to say to them, yo, I'm telling you, boom, boom, without even knowing that they still might go ahead and do that.
Right, but let me ask you this question. We read 1 John 4 verse 8, that God is love, innit?
Yeah.
I don't know if you was there by then. Was you there by then?
Oh, this is like Good Friday, isn't it? I actually shared this text on my Instagram today.
I wasn't aware of that. That's just purely coincidental. I didn't know, but that's a good thing. It's a good coincidence. So we read 1 John 4 verse 8. Did you join by then, Anton?
I'm
How
not
do you not
entirely
know,
sure.
man? You had to
Which
add
one
him
was
in.
that one?
No. Yeah, but I wasn't. You know, you're not aware what you're doing.
I think I came at Romans 13:8.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I read 1 John 4 verse 8 because there was a question that arose. Well, did the angels have freedom of choice? Do you see? And I was like, it's not. And I was admitting that it's not that really. It's very hard to prove from the Bible that they did.
That's neither here nor there. I don't think that's going to be speculation.
No, but it is
relevant to our current situation, is it?
Well, did Adam and Eve have choice? How do we know they had choice? If the angels are created, Adam and Eve are created. Did they have choice? So it's the same thing. Do you see?
Because the reason why you have to put that into consideration, the reason why you have to put that into consideration
is because Lucifer, because Satan is an angel and he is the one causing the problem. So they had no choice.
Right.
Then what Satan is doing is whose fault? It has to be God's, because he's the creator. And I gave the analogy that when these Bluetooth headphones when they're made, every piece of technology goes through rigorous testing, like especially cars. Let's use cars for example. They put it on these machines with the window wipers, for example, and they'll run it for like 20, 50, 40, 100,000 times, just doing that at top speed until it breaks, to see, if there's any faults or whatever. Now, if these break, you don't blame the Bluetooth headphones itself. You blame the manufacturers. You take it back to the manufacturers. So if the angels didn't have choice, then this idea of them doing wrong and Satan tempting and being evil, it's not on them, because they have no choice.
God's fault. Yeah.
It has to be God's fault, the creator. He wired the thing wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like, go back to your manufacturer and do the thing properly.
No, but you got to look at it. Like, I guess so. But
you got no. This is the thing. Let me say this point.
Go on.
Hold on, just a second. And remember your point. Don't forget. Just quickly. This is the thing. We shouldn't be afraid of when if we have a question in it. If we have a point. When I say we, like it was somebody on the study that had the point, right? They have a point. They have a question. We shouldn't be afraid that if we set that premise down, that point, the logic that follows afterwards is the logical thought. It might not be correct until we look at the premise. So if the premise is angels have no choice, then there's some logical sequence, there's some logical ideas going to come about from that premise. Like, got no choice. That we have to go down that road and look at it in this, and we shouldn't be afraid as to what the implications are, because that's the question somebody has. So for example, right, somebody says, well, Mike, I don't follow, I'm giving an example of a false premise, right? I don't follow God because he created Adam and Eve sinned, and we're in this mess. Now that's logical. That's very logical. Of course, did he create Adam and Eve? Correct. Check that box. Are we in a situation now where I'm struggling to obey? Let's check that box. If I don't obey, what's going to happen? I'm going to be lost. Let's check that box. But there's a flaw there's a flaw in the story. The flaw in the story, in the narrative, in what they're thinking, they've missed something out. What have they missed out? This is what we covered in the study. What they missed out is Jesus. Without Jesus, that narrative, I would reject God. Because how are you depending upon us in this scenario, this environment that we're in? It's not Eden. It's not paradise.
No, but this environment. Is what I'm saying though. Like, if
hold on. Let me finish my train of thought. Give me an example. Just remember. So I'm just saying, this is not an argument to be refuted. This is just showing the logic of when somebody says, but Adam and Eve sinned. But that makes sense because they haven't put in the equation Jesus coming as a man, being tempted as a man, being the savior. When you take him out of the equation, there's nothing to argue about.
Out of the equation, that you can't take him out of the equation.
No, Anton. It's not people are doing it willingly. That's what people believe because they haven't been taught about Jesus.
Right.
They haven't been taught about him. They don't know. And the Jesus that is being presented, he's not attractive. Because he's not
No,
even.
he's not.
Let's
He's not. He's
let's
not.
be
He's
real.
definitely not.
Let's
No, he's
be
not
real.
attractive. That's
Right.
That was
In
one of my
fact,
main
he's not even
problems.
spoken about really. Let's be real. If you watch most YouTube channels, what most Christian churches are preaching, they are not preaching Christ. They're preaching miracles, entertainment, amusements, get rich, and motivational talks, things you can hear a secular guy say. Let's be real. If we're gonna be frank, let's be real. They're not talking about Christ and the love of God and Jesus being.
About the love.
We're not breaking those things down to you and showing how Jesus can be in your life, the Spirit, and all these things. I'm talking generally now. Of course, there's loads of Christian preachers who talk about Jesus and the beauty of Christ and the love of God and blah, 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 blah. So all I'm saying is, I'm talking generally, the average person on the road, they know about Adam and Eve. And so it's like, God, Adam and Eve, it's his fault, brother, man. And then God expects me, and he's going to punish me for not obeying. But I have no power to obey. Because they see religion as just a bunch of do's and don'ts. You guys are good, man. You grew up in church, innit, man? So do your thing, innit? Me? I didn't grow up in church. True. So how can you... So they see you as special because you grew up in an environment and an advantage. You being taught... I ain't being taught these things, and now you want me to now reach what you're on? Nah, it's impossible. There's no way I'm going to do it.
Mike, hang on.
That's a definite fact, bro, yeah? Like what you just said is a definitive fact. Like that goes about saying I have to agree with that because that's where I'm at, right? That I've seen that. That's why I have to. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, bro. Because it's like if you know who Christ is, then it's like you need to slap a man to be just like look. You know what I'm trying to say? Because you want him just to see because you know what it is. But what I'm saying is that going back to what you were saying about with Adam and Eve. Like looking at it with just the Adam and Eve and God perspective, like I know what you're saying in a sense, that how you would come to that idea that, you know, oh well they sinned, but then that's still not, can't really say that because they don't know the full story anyway.
But that's the point. That's the only point I'm making, Anton. Literally, that's all I'm saying.
Well,
literally,
they don't know the point that they don't know that part of the story. Period.
That's it.
So right, okay, because
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And so when you don't know that, it's like God is this monster, man. He's put us here, put man in the test. Man is sin, and now he's expecting you and I to follow him without no power, no strength, and he's going to judge us at the end. That's literally people's sum total of who God is.
But man, and that's where then you're drawing a parallel with the Muslims saying that their God could just, okay, everything's set. Because there's nothing on the line of what. I definitely understand that.
That's it. So what I'm saying is, that's it.
About the angels' freedom of choice, then, because when you were saying about the freedom
of choice, the implications, yes. So
he wouldn't have been able to. You're saying that God would have been to blame because
if we say that angels have no choice, because Lucifer was an angel, and the Bible says he had iniquity in him. So if he has no choice, then whatever he does out of him having no choice is not his own decision. It's the Creator's fault for wiring. You know, you put the wires messed up. You put it like in a machinery language.
I don't know, but what happens if you didn't put the wires messed up? What happens if it was designed like that?
But then exactly, that's God's fault then. And then who's going to follow God? Who does that? Not me. All I'm saying is, and this is the thing, Anton, you're never going to convince me on this one. Like, I'm saying is...
No, I'm not trying to... I'm just trying to understand.
No, I don't... No. This is what I'm saying. I'm saying, if you want to go down that road, go by yourself. I'm never following a God who creates people without angels without choice, who are going to go rogue and then puts blame on them and then blame on those who follow his beings without choice. That's not fair. That don't make any sense. That's what I'm saying, innit? I personally would never follow a God who does that.
Because
doesn't make any sense.
He's saying that he's done that. Okay, he's got the freedom of choice to do whatever he wants. So where does that choice come from out of that freedom?
I didn't hear what you say. Sorry, I didn't. When you was repeating.
But for me, I've never looked at it like that, because I can't.
No, rewind. What's the thought you're saying? Rewind. I think we're.
No, just everything what you're saying. I never thought of it as like a blame game. Like God done like this or that. I've never thought of it like this. So this is the first time I'm thinking of it like that. Yeah. So
Oh, right.
for me,
sorry.
if I look at it like that, yeah, if I look at it like that, yeah, I'm gonna blame God either way, because if you've got the freedom of choice, then the freedom of choice still didn't come from you, even though you had the free choice to do that. Because where if everything is all good, then bad can't come from you if you're all good. So it's
Well,
like
your
it's
definition.
if what Claire was saying earlier on, not Claire. What's your cousin's name now?
Chantel.
Chantal now, yeah. If what Chantal was saying, like death is merciful now, yeah. It's like then we've got the wrong interpretation of death. So it's like from when we're looking at it from a perspective like that, you have to then understand the full implications of everything else which are aligned with death. Because then the whole landscape changes of like what is. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Because then it's just a fulfillment on the balance of what exists already. Like because death already existed before any of that happened. Because he said if you do this, you positively will die. So
let me repeat what I understand. Let me know if I'm understanding you correctly. You're saying even if we go down the road of saying God gave us choice or we're the angel's choice, we could still blame him anyway because the choices that are made, because he gave you choice and you make the bad choice, then it's still his fault because he gave you the ability to choose. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. However, with Christ, that obviously does erase that, because that is the point, that Christ obviously he's the equalizer. But it still doesn't take it. Go on.
Not really, because you can't blame God for your choice. Because then in this life,
but you got to remember though, your choice, you didn't choose to be here,
right?
So your choices which you've had,
right,
and that you've had, they still don't trump that you didn't ask to be there.
True. But that would have never but that never would have been.
No. But what these would-haves and whatever else that will go down. That will go on forever. But the point is that what Mike's saying now, that Christ is here and he's done what he's done. So he's wiped that slate clean. Right? He's wiped that clean. But obviously it's just not going to be a clean sheet. Whatever happens.
But what I'm saying is, I think
sin is. It's all because of sin. This is why you're thinking like that, because it was never meant to be like this.
No, but whoa.
Yeah, because it wasn't. Yeah, but I get what you're saying is in. Well, we never, and when I was younger, I was like, I never asked to be here. Like, why me? Or we never asked to be on this planet, and blah blah. But everyone has a purpose. But it's all you got to remember. Like in the beginning, it was just Adam and Eve, and that was that choice. And then God.
I do believe that we've got a purpose, and I believe that. Listen, this is how I think of it. Yeah, I think that if God knows me, yeah, he knew me before I was born. He knew me before I was conceived. He knows the amount of hairs on my head. Jesus knew that they was going to crucify him before the people was going to crucify him, even were alive or the civilization was around. So he knows all things, innit? Like, so for me, like in my honest opinion, like I just honestly accept the point that I just do not understand the greater point of what was, because it's just a higher order than what I can even comprehend at this point in time. Because whichever which way I look at it, I can't, like it says, yeah, like in the Bible, the scripture that's really kind of like helped me along with things, yeah, was the scripture that you guys was going over about. I'm gonna show you the depth, the breadth, the height, and the width of my love, and that passes knowledge, and that's God's love. So when I get that, when I'm in a position and I'm seeing God's love for the full extent that it is, that passes knowledge, that's gonna then satisfy every part of thought that we could possibly have. But at this current time, I just don't possibly believe that any of us can even start to think that we can rationalize what happened, because I don't think we're in a position to rationalize it in any way. Like we can in a way, but I don't think it ever. I don't think from saying like who's to blame, then like it whatever happens, it ain't a clean sheet.
Now let's rewind, because we've gone. The simple point was this. Let's rewind. The simple point was this: someone made a statement about they weren't sure whether the angels had choice or not. And I said, well, scripturally it's a bit difficult to prove whether they did. So I said, I'm with you on that one, because they said it's a grey area. And I says, I can see that, right? Yeah. Because in terms of, there's not an explicit text saying the angels had choice. And there's things like that in the Bible when you're trying to prove something or come to, it's like some things are explicit and some things are not. So how do you answer a question when you haven't got an explicit text? Do you see? For example, we have to go down. Let me just give this a good example. There's a lot of people who believe Adam and Eve weren't saved. They don't see how they were. Because when they read Genesis, they don't believe Adam and Eve were saved. So they weren't offered forgiveness or salvation. They're just lost. They're dead. They're not. They're kicked out of the garden, then they were just left to live and then just die. Right? A lot of Christians believe that. Right? Now, the reason why they believe that is not because they're bad people, and they're just the way they read the Bible, the Genesis 3, they don't see no explicit evidence. They're looking for the part where it says Adam knelt down and went, Lord, forgive me. And because they don't see that, they're like, well, where? And then every time I've done the study with, Christians who think that, they've always gone, oh, I never saw that.
It's the inference, isn't it?
This is it, the implications. So it's the same thing with the angels. We don't have much about the angels, but the Bible's not written that way where everything is explicit, but you can
it's not on the surface.
But I mean,
that's it, Adrio. And then so
God is so consistent that we already.
But hold on, so let me finish my train of thought. Hold on. You're not gonna get what I'm saying unless I finish my train of thought. Just remember your point, right? So then I'm just giving an example in it. So with Genesis 3, the question I will ask them is, so the animal that must have died to clothe them, what's that? Oh, it's only one verse. It's just one verse, 22. And God made them coats of skins. That's it. Now, there's a lot said in there, but you have to ask the questions. What was that? Who killed the animal? Why is he calling coat of skin? That's just an example. So the way I answered the question, to go down, the reason why I felt it was important to answer the question of the angels, because Satan is an angel and he's who sinned. So if all I was saying to you was, if we go down the reason why it has implications in it on God, because he created them, and if he created them without choice, then whatever they've done is not their fault. You can't hold someone to blame who has absolutely no choice. That doesn't make any sense. Exactly. It's like trying to bring a robot to the court. No one ever bring a machine to court ever. It's insane. So they're machines. If they're machines, we bring the creator to court. When something goes wrong, malpractice, a car goes wrong, you don't bring the car to court and try Mercedes, right? The brakes went, right? You bring the manufacturers to court. So if they have no choice, it is what they are. They're machines. Just because they have flesh and blood, well, not flesh and we don't know what they have, but they're machines. They're automatons.
If they had no choice. If they would have had no choice, then they would. Okay.
So what he's saying.
Yeah, that's it, Andrea. That's what they were built to do.
Right.
Do you see?
So he's saying, because Satan fell and iniquity was felt in, seen in him, and he fell, right? He
fell,
and he turned wicked. He's saying that then it can't be Satan's fault. Then
can't be.
If angels have no free will, then it has to be God's fault, because he obviously wired them wrong. Otherwise, why did he fall then? He had.
There can be no culpability. But
even then, Anton hung up. But even then, you still got the fact that he's taken a third of the angels with him.